Welcome. I'm Felix Rumain, Chair of Africana Studies, and we have two amazing faculty members affiliated to Africana Studies, Dr. Darlene Dubuisson and Dr. Crystal Eddins, who each have written a book on Haiti, and today they will talk about their book. Welcome. So, why did you write this book, Crystal?
Well, I wrote this book because I wanted to begin to try to understand how the Haitian Revolution happened, what were some of the pre-revolutionary forms of resistance that enslaved people were doing prior to the Haitian Revolution and prior to the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So also trying to kind of decenter France and the French Revolution and thinking about Haiti and the Haitian Revolution and trying to bring an interdisciplinary approach to the study of the Haitian Revolution. So I wanted to basically understand who the African people were that were involved in the Haitian Revolution and involved in colonial Haiti's resistance struggle prior to 1791 and leading up to those events.
So you said decenter the French Revolution. Some would say, some have written that the French Revolution, played a central role, and the Haitian Revolution. Not so much, you think? Why not?
Well, yes, I do think that the French Revolution presented important moments of opportunity that the Haitian revolutionaries were able to exploit and leverage. But in terms of the overarching kind of theme of the Haitian Revolution, in terms of being an anti-slavery, anti-colonial struggle, this was a struggle that had been ongoing from the time that the first Africans set foot on Haiti's island. In the late 15th century. So the struggle for freedom from slavery and colonial oppression had been ongoing for several centuries before the French Revolution.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. And Professor Dubuisson, why did you write this book?
This book actually started after the 2010 earthquake. So it started with me going back home to Haiti and wanting to partake in rebuilding the country. So it started with my own homecoming, my own grappling with my history and also my future by thinking about the future of my homeland. But ultimately, why I wrote it is to confront the ideas that Haiti is a place with no futures, where the majority of Haitians leave what people see as this ongoing place of unsettlement and exile. Reclaiming Haiti's Futures talks about the generations of intellectuals and activists and artists who returned to Haiti at different moments of crises. The ones I focus on is after the 29-year Duvalier dictatorship and after the earthquake. And it is a counter-narrative that confronts the notion that Black places like Haiti don't have futures on their own terms.
Wonderful. Writing a book is a journey, right? And I think it was a happy journey because, you remember part of that journey, which is good, I hope it was a happy journey. But so you have completed that journey. Every journey you have surprises. What are some of the surprises that you encountered? A surprise, something that shocked you or surprised you, while writing these very important books about Haiti. Dr. Eddins.
Something that surprised me, or maybe something that I learned from the process of writing the book, and maybe from the reception that I've received from it so far, is the ways that people have read it differently, and in particularly have read it maybe in through a lens of kind of feminist methodology, just in terms of the way that the book focuses on the types of social networks that enslaved people and Maroons were able to cultivate and create and use as resources that would help them to liberate themselves and to liberate their families from enslavement prior to the Haitian Revolution. I think that having the feedback of from other folks of thinking about the book in that way, not necessarily in focusing explicitly on women and gender, but using some of the kind of epistemological tenets of feminism, Black feminism in particular, that focus on the domestic sphere, that focus on families, the reproductive aspects of the ways that enslaved women faced various forms of exploitation, have really helped me to kind of expand the way that I think about this work, and helped me to make linkages that I perhaps otherwise would not have.
It's amazing.
And what about you, Professor Dubuisson?
What surprised me is the process of writing a book. It started as a dissertation, and people say the best dissertation is the one that's finished. And I thought my dissertation was good. It definitely wasn't a book. The book asked me to have a thread from chapter to chapter. It forced me to think about who would read this, who do I want reading this. And it also forced me to think about accessibility and writing as itself as an invitation and not as an armoring. So writing this book as an invitation, I was thinking about who was I inviting. First and foremost, it was the scholars with whom I worked, right? They were in the pages. I theorized with them and revealed their conflicts and their lives and named them in a lot of instances. And so this idea of being responsible to them as an audience, and then thinking about another audience, which is just folks who are interested in higher education, who might see Haiti as an example of, a post-colonial reality, and also thinking about those who want to read a book to be moved. So I guess what surprised me is thinking about how the particular case of returned intellectuals, how imagining futures after crises, how this wasn't a story that was often told, especially not in relationship to Haiti, and that it had many connections to many audiences, more than, let's say, my examiners of my dissertation, which the book itself then looked different, it felt different, and I hope it will be received as an invitation to many different folks. I'm not yet at the point where I know what the general feedback will be, but from the folks who reviewed the book, they're coming from all kind of interests, and using Haiti as this space to think with has been surprising and also was a goal of the book itself.
Thank you. And I guess my last question would be for you. How does your book projects, these wonderful books that you wrote, how do they inform your future research projects? In any sort of way, perhaps, Professor Eddins?
Sure. So one of the interventions that the book makes, and tries to draw on previous scholarship about racial capitalism and the Black radical tradition, has been thinking about how the transatlantic slave trade kind of collapsed African people of various backgrounds into the singular identity of the so-called Negro. And part of what the book does is to kind of undo that racial violence by kind of reclaiming some of the African heritages of the enslaved people who were brought to Haiti. And so what I'm hoping and thinking about for my next project is in that similar vein as it pertains to enslaved African and African descended women, and the different ways that the mechanisms of the slave trade and colonialism not only reduced them to racial identities and reduced them to biological and reproductive labor and agricultural labor, kind of erasing some of the African and West Central African heritages and roles that women played in societies, whether that was the political, militaristic roles, the agricultural and religious roles. And so I'm interested in thinking about the ways that enslaved African women throughout the Atlantic were exhibiting and performing the roles and the ways that they were kind of accustomed to approaching questions of resistance, and in particular with relationship to sacred practices. And so I'm interested in this kind of concept of like queen mothers and the ways that different enslaved women from Jamaica to Haiti, even to Cuba, were oftentimes described as queens within their kind of sacred gatherings and within religious and resistance communities.
And Professor Dubuisson?
So my work, I continually to think with the ways that crises articulate different futures. My work now is actually in Mexico, at the border between Guatemala and Mexico. And what I'm looking there is at the experiences of Black migrants from across the African continent and Haiti. The ways that these migrants found themselves as transit migrants walking from or traveling from Chile and Brazil because of what I theorize as anti-Black immigration governmentality, and the ways in which crises as these states of exceptions allow for these laws and practices that dehumanize Black subjects in particular. So thinking about the ways that various African peoples and Haitians as transit migrants are making this dangerous trek toward the United States because of the legal routes closed off in the Mediterranean Sea and closed off at the US-Mexico border. I'm thinking about violence. I'm thinking about crises as states of exceptions to enact violence, but also I'm thinking about love. As I've started off this work a couple of years ago, what I noticed is that these migrants were enacting love in the bell hook sort of way, this extending themselves for another in ways that were not logical. These weren't blood kin oftentimes, and they weren't legal kin, but that folks made families along the way, men and women, adopting children, entering into marriages, and facing violences together. I'm curious about that. Just like with this book that thinks about futures in Haiti, the counter-narrative of Black places being places, yes, that are in the wake of slavery, but also places that can be reformed. I'm thinking about love as this possibility of navigating towards a future amid, again, what I theorize as anti-Black immigration governmentality.
Amazing. Well, Professor Dubuisson and Eddins, merci en pile. Thank you very much.